Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. For Whom the Bell Tolls. By Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway wrote For Whom the Bell Tolls in 1940, and it was published by Knopf in that year. As part of his training for a bridge bombing operation, 19-year-old Robert Jordan finds himself thrust into the midst of the Spanish Civil War. An American living in the center of the country, he taught Spanish at a major research university. The International Brigades, an organization of communist volunteers dedicated to aiding Spain's independence movement, also included him among its members during the Spanish Civil War. Democracy was fought against fascism. After all was said and done, fascism triumphed in Spain, and General Francisco Franco dominated the country for the next 36 years. During an attack on Segovia, Spain, Robert Jordan is part of a guerrilla group and is ordered to blow up a bridge. Maria, a woman whose life was devastated by fascist troops, is one of the squad's many members. Robert begins to question the prudence of the upcoming conflict when the two fall in love. Although they have misplaced the detonator and some explosives, Robert and his crew are able to blow up the bridge despite the fact that they must be closer to the explosion than is safe. Robert and Maria, along with a few others, manage to escape. After being struck by a sniper, Robert's horse suddenly falls on top of him, shattering his leg in the process. Tells them that he won't be back, and asks Augustine to look after Maria. The story concludes with him waiting for an opportunity to ambush the approaching fascist troops and extend the departure time of his squad. John Donne's epigraph appears at the beginning of For Whom the Bell Tolls. No man is an island is the title of a poem. Every human being is a part of the greater whole of humanity. The death of a human being affects me because I am a part of the human race. When we hear funeral bells sound, Donne advises us to consider the fact that it is ringing for all of us, not just the deceased. A young American university instructor, Robert Jordan, is shown in the first scene of the Spanish Civil War in 1837, when he is fighting on the Republican side. Anselmo, an elderly farmer, is leading him deep into enemy territory so that he can join a tiny band of guerrillas at a bridge that Robert is instructed to blow up. Anselmo warns the soldiers about the stranger they are about to bring into their midst before they even reach the squad's tent. In the meantime, Robert is pondering about the next job and who handed him the task. He and General Goals had talked at length the night before about the urgency of blowing up this bridge. They were both aware that it would be a challenging task. Anselmo will be accompanied by Pablo, the squad's leader, when he returns. Because he is illiterate, Pablo has a negative reaction to Robert's commandments, which prompts him to despise him immediately. The scolding of Anselmo ultimately persuades Pablo to help carry the bomb. Robert and Anselmo's interactions with Pablo led Robert to believe that Pablo's commitment to the cause may be waning. Robert believes he will be able to tell when the man is ready to betray them because he is so unpleasant right now. Raphael is the first person Robert sees when he arrives at the camp. They were then served a meal by Pablo's mate Pilar and Maria, the young girl who they had saved from the train they had attacked earlier. 7 males and 2 females make up the group. Maria will be accompanying Robert on his departure, and Pilar scans his palm after he promises to. A nearby unit led by El Sordo can help with the bridge, she tells him. After that, Robert and Anselmo look out the bridge together. As soon as they're done checking the bridge, Augustine joins them back at camp. To be on the safe side, he cautions Robert to thoroughly check his explosives before putting them to use. Anselmo believes that Augustine is trustworthy, but he doubts Pablo's honesty. Pablo informs Robert at the camp that he has made the decision not to assist with the bridge. Pilar, on the other hand, has pledged her support, and as she is the squad's leader, they'll be there for her. If he doesn't kill Pablo, Robert is unsure of what to do. His slumber is interrupted by Maria, who tells him that she loves him and that if he loves her, they can sleep together. They spend the remainder of the night together because he claims he does. Robert is awakened the next morning by the sound of enemy planes flying above. They may have found out about their plot to blow up the bridge, he is afraid. Robert is taken to El Sordo's camp by Pilar and Maria after having breakfast. Planning for the future mission with El Sordo is tough because he is nearly deaf. However, they must be extremely careful since they want to detonate the bridge throughout the day on Tuesday, shortly after the Republican airstrikes begin. Pilar takes the lead on the walk back to their camp so Robert and Maria may have some quiet time to themselves. First time Robert considers returning to Montana and accepting her as a wife back there. However, he wonders if he will be acknowledged as a communist because of it. Maria shows Robert a razor blade she always keeps in case she captures him again and pledges to take care of him when he thinks about writing a book about his adventures there. Pilar, Back at the camp, is curious about Maria's love life and predicts that it will snow, despite the fact that it is late May. Of course, she is correct, and the snow is falling in a thick layer. Anselmo is spying on a fascist camp while on duty as a watchman. It impresses Robert that Anselmo didn't leave his post when Robert and one of the men show up to take his place. Robert enjoys having Maria take care of him while the three guys gather around the campfire to reminisce about their time in the military. Men confront Robert with questions about his employment as a Spanish teacher and the United States government. Robert tries to get Pablo into a fight during this time so he may kill him. Pablo, on the other hand, refuses to fall for the bait and instead heads out to care the animals. A few hours later, Pablo returns and casually states that he'll assist the gang build the bridge. During the snowstorm, Robert reminisces about his earlier adventures and the fights he had with the Russian journalist, Kharkov, in Madrid. The man told Robert that he was impressed by the writing style of one of Robert's scholarly papers. Robert had already made up his mind to publish a book on the battle in the future at that point. That Robert shot Kashkin, and that the man had a premonition of his own death, Pilar tells the rest of the audience. Because he's not religious, Robert believes it was a manifestation of a self-fulfilling prophecy. After the snow has stopped, Robert and Maria sleep outside the cave once more. The next morning, a man riding a horse knocks on Robert's door, waking him up. He shoots the man since he knows he's a fascist. His next thought is, where is Raphael? But when he finds out the man was out in the field, he's not too concerned. So that the fascists will not find them, Robert has Pablo ride the man's horse away from the camp. Then he and a few of the other men hid. They'll soon see more fascists passing by, apparently in pursuit of the rails. The men are all jittery, and Robert is concerned that they are making too much noise. Robert should treat Maria as well as Maria should be treated by Augustine at breakfast the next day. Meanwhile, Robert hears a disturbance in the distance and realizes that El Sordo's camp is under attack. They continue their conversation. He advises everyone to keep away from it. Robert informs the men that even if they want to help El Sordo, they must make sacrifices in combat. Pilar agrees with him when she comes. Then she promises to send Maria the documents they seized from the deceased Nazi. Robert wonders if he's a true Marxist because he believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness once the snow has melted. However, he considers himself fortunate to have met Maria in the first place. At the same time, the conflict rages atop the hill. Sordo's soldiers are losing. The story is then described from both the fascist and Republican perspectives. Some men on both sides are weary of fighting, while others are idealists willing to sacrifice their lives for their beliefs. Lieutenant Berendo, the fascist leader, orders his troops to sever the heads of El Sordo's guerrillas after the smoke clears. He returns to the camp after evading Lieutenant Berendo and viewing the beheaded corpses to learn that Pablo had already returned and relayed the details of the incident to everyone else. Robert sends a letter to the general recommending that the general suspend the plans to blow up the bridge and the wider attack that had been planned. Sending one of his men into hostile territory, Pablo compliments him on his clear-headedness. Robert is almost certain that the onslaught will continue regardless. He suspects the general is restless as well. Finally, when he and Maria settle in for the night, she tells him of her ordeal in captivity and the horrors she witnessed. Despite his best efforts, she admits that Pilar had foreseen that they would all die the following day, which enrages him to no end. Kharkov arrives at his hotel in Madrid, where his mistress and wife are waiting for him. A journalist informs him that the fascists have begun attacking their own troops with bombs. He is shocked. Because of all the leaks, Kharkov is anxious about Robert, a subordinate of the general at the very facility that he was just informed of being under attack. He intends to meet with the general at 2 a.m. the next morning. At 2 a.m., Pilar tells Robert that Pablo has departed and has taken some of the dynamite with him, and Robert is startled by this information. Her claimed role in the explosive security has him fuming, but he eventually calms himself and goes back to bed with the intention of waking up at 4 in the morning. Robert's messenger to the general, Andres, is tearing through the countryside at breakneck speed. The fact that he has been told to back off from the attack makes him glad, because he is terrified of how much he enjoys killing others. He likens it to bull baiting in his mind. When Robert finally regains consciousness, he is still enraged about Pablo's behavior. He begins to devise a strategy for completing his task despite the fact that he has fewer troops, fewer horses, and even less ammo at his disposal. Robert tells Pilar that he intends to use grenades in place of the explosives stolen from Maria after spending some time with her again. Pablo interrupts their conversation with the arrival of a group of men he's brought along. After tossing the bomb into the river, he felt remorse and now wants to return to them. He is confident that he and his team can be of assistance. Despite their continued hostility, they have forgiven him and are relieved to have him back in their lives. Despite the fact that Robert is not religious, he sees Pablo's reappearance as a positive omen for the future. Among the new recruits, Pilar even recognizes two of them. Still, Andres is having a hard time communicating with the general. There are many military checkpoints along the route. In the end, Captain Gomez, the battalion's commanding officer, greets him. Gomez leads him to Lieutenant Colonel Miranda, the next step in the chain of command. However, he must first get past the man's secretary in order to meet with him. To wake the lieutenant colonel, Gomez had to hold a gun to the man's throat, and he ultimately agrees. For Andres, Miranda asks the man to draft a pass that allows him to communicate with the general. Then he gives the order to Gomez to accompany Andres to the headquarters of General Goals. In order to detonate the bridge, Robert and his comrades leave their horses near where they intend to do it. Once again, he tells Pilar what her responsibilities are, which irks her. After that, he awkwardly bids farewell to Maria. Anselmo and Augustine break away from the rest of the team and move for their target, the bridge. Using the machine gun, Robert instructs Anselmo on how to take down a guard. After that, he settles into his own spot and awaits the rising of the sun. Andre Marti, a military advisor, stands in the way of Captain Gomez and Andres getting to the general's office at the command headquarters. Because of this, Andre decides to arrest the two men. The narrator informs out that even if Andres hadn't been imprisoned, the general's men would still have been unable to stop the operation. As soon as Kharkov learns of the arrest, he uses his influence to secure their release. A copy of the letter is delivered directly to General Duval's chief of staff. Even though he's contemplating quitting the mission on his own, he's not sure it'd be a smart idea. Whether or not they stand to gain anything. General Goals receives the missive, but it is too late. As of now, the bombings have begun. Robert and his team wake up to an unexpected interruption in their peaceful morning. They had been waiting for a signal, and this bombing is it. Afterward, he and Anselmo kill the two guards and attach the explosion to the bridge. Pilar appears as Robert and Anselmo prepare to attach the explosives to the other end of the bridge. She's lost one of her guys, and the other is in a critical condition. In order to protect the explosives, they agree to leave him alone with a gun. Anselmo waits for Robert to finish setting up the bridge at the other end while he does the same. In the event of an accident, he detonates the bridge. Falling debris kills him instantly. Angry at the loss of life, especially that of Anselmo, Robert's fury is relieved by Pilar's help. As a result of the explosion, Maria is keeping a tight rein on the horses and preventing them from bolting. When Pilar yells out that Robert is safe, she feels a sense of relief. When Pablo returns, Robert makes a pit stop to collect Augustine, who has been operating the machine gun. Augustine blames him with their murders after he claims that all of his men have been killed. As far as he's concerned, he doesn't refute it. As the gang nears Maria, Robert embraces her. Afterwards, they all mount their horses and ride off into the distance. Robert's horse is suddenly shot by a sniper, and it falls on top of him, severing his leg. While the others walk on without him, Augustine offers to shoot him so that he cannot be brought into custody. Robert rejects the offer, but begs him to look after Maria. Robert is waiting for the fascist warriors to discover him as he lies on the woodland floor. This past 3 days have taught him so much and allowed him to experience so much of life. He looks back on it. Finally, he ponders taking his own life and killing as many of his enemies as he can while still alive. Finally, he hears the soldiers approaching. Every time he sees Lieutenant Berendo leading the mounted soldiers, he envisions him beheading every one of El Sordo's men as well. Aiming towards the lieutenant's chest, he closes the story. Robert Jordan, the protagonist of the story. Robert was a professor of Spanish at a Montana university. During the Spanish Civil War, he enlisted in the International Brigades as a volunteer. He is also a communist from the 1930s. The book explores his conflicted feelings about the war and whether he thinks it's a good idea or a bad one. When the Republicans commence their attack on Segovia, Spain, they call on Robert, a munitions specialist, to blow up the bridge and slow down the fascist army movement. A charismatic communist journalist attracted him while he was living in Madrid. What does Robert begin to doubt after meeting and falling in love with the rebels he is supposed to be working with and saving the life of Maria, the woman they rescued? When it comes down to it, He sacrifices everything to keep her safe, and he does so bravely. Maria, Robert's love interest. When he first sees her, he discovers that she had survived a fascist attack. The insurgents she is currently with saved her life during the rail attack. When Maria is carried to the train, she is mercilessly raped by her captors. When she sees Robert for the first time, she is humiliated by the fact that she has had all of her hair cut off. She is smitten with him right away and has sex with him on their first night together, publicly expressing her love for him. After the second night, she insists they are married and puts on her marriage shirt in the bedroom. A frequent nickname of Robert's for her is Rabbit because of her lightning-fast movements. Anselmo, an old Spaniard. This man is Robert's go-to guy when it comes to fighting the rebels. He often ponders the senseless devastation that war entails. He's not a fan of killing people. Also, since the communists prohibited organized religion, he hasn't been able to pray, and he misses it. He dies valiantly, still connected to the soil, at the end. Pilar, the mother figure of the group of guerrillas. As Pablo's wife, she is truly the group's leader, even though he thinks he is. She commands the men, and they do what she commands. Besides healing their wounds and cooking for them, she also battles with them. A gypsy, she has the ability to read palms and predict the future. Pablo, the guerrilla leader's second in command. He's fed up with fighting and doubts the conflict is worth waging. In the wake of his tragedies and witnessing horrors, Pablo turned to alcohol and has since proven himself to be unpredictable. Pablo is constantly on the verge of betraying them all to the fascists throughout the book. His horses are his one and only true passion. Kharkov, Robert's friend, he recruited Robert to the cause. Robert gets taken under the wing of a charismatic journalist. If Robert is to be believed, he is the smartest person he has ever met, especially when it comes to abstract philosophy and how it trumps practical experience and instinct. Despite Robert's apparent awe of the man, the reader is aware of his flaws as well. He brings his mistress and his wife into a combat zone when he travels with them. Biography of Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Miller Hemingway was an American novelist and short story writer best known for his works The Sun Also Rises, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and, of course, A Farewell to Arms. He was born in Oak Park, Illinois in 1899. At the end of his life, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature for his work on 7 novels and 6 short story collections. Posthumously, he left behind unfinished manuscripts for several projects. As an enthusiastic hunter, fisherman, and bullfight fan, Hemingway drew significantly on these experiences in his works. Laconic speech and understated emotion define his writing style. There are many classics of American literature that have been adapted into films by his works. While working as a reporter for the Kansas City Star during World War I, Hemingway volunteered as an ambulance driver for the Italian Red Cross. When he was moved to the Italian infantry, he was shot in the leg. After the war, he became a war correspondent for the Toronto Star before relocating to Paris. The other American expatriate authors he met there, including Ezra Pound and Gertrude Stein, were supportive of his work. Hemingway served as a war correspondent for the U.S. First Army during World War II. He took part in multiple fights despite not being a soldier. He first settled in Havana, Cuba, before eventually making his way to Ketchum, Idaho, after the war. In 1961, Ernest Hemingway took his own life by shooting himself in the head with a shotgun after a lifetime of excessive drinking. Ketchum, Idaho, is where he is buried. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.